This is a video about me and my wife's first trip together on our honeymoon in Italy. So we were in Italy for about 9 days. We spent 3 days in Rome, 3 days in Florence, and 3 days in Venice. And I'm going to talk about all the different experiences and all the different things we did while in each of those cities. So first, we started off our trip in Rome. On day one, we went to the Rome, Italy temple. This was a perfect way to start our trip since it was our honeymoon, and it was the perfect reminder of that temple marriage that we had just entered into not long ago. In the visitor center, there's the Christus statue, and it's kind of unique because behind it, it has the statues of the 12 apostles, which I think is very cool. There's also this beautiful stained glass mural with a ton of references to the New Testament. On the way there and on the way back, we actually got to talk to our driver about our religion and also his religion, so that was a very interesting experience. After the temple, we had a little bit of time to kill before our night tour, so we went to a nearby basilica, and inside the ceiling was really tall and it was like gold. And we thought this was so cool, but in reality, it wasn't even nearly as cool as the majority of what we ended up seeing during the rest of this trip. After that, we started our night tour. We got in this big van with a bunch of other people, and we went around seeing some of the most popular sites in Rome. Our favorite that we saw there was the Trevi Fountain, and we actually got to do the thing where you throw some coins over your shoulder into the fountain. We also got to go to the Spanish Steps, and that was really cool. This was also where we started to realize that everywhere we went on this trip was going to be really packed full of people. It did not hinder our experience in Italy, but it was just good to realize that that is how it was going to be. And that was the end of day one. Now on to day two in Rome. Day two was probably the busiest day we had on the entire trip because we had an all-day walking tour. Walking all day was really hard, but it was totally worth it. We got to see so many different things, and our tour guide who was there with us the whole time was very knowledgeable, so he was able to teach us so many different things we never would have learned about the culture, about the sites, and all that kind of stuff. Also, because we booked this tour through a certain company, we actually had tickets that would bring us to the front of most lines. So that was very beneficial because we got to skip the lines, we got to see more attractions in a shorter amount of time. So our tour started at the Colosseum, where we got to learn a lot about the history of the building itself, but also like the gladiators that fought in it. We then walked to a couple different places like the Piazza Venezia and also the Pantheon. The Pantheon was really cool because it's got this really big dome that shouldn't be able to hold itself up, but it does. There were many other small locations that we saw in between all these different places that I'm talking about, but I'm mainly talking about the big attractions. So I may throw some pictures up here and there of some of the smaller things we passed by as we went to these bigger locations. After that, we went to lunch at the Piazza Navona. Sorry if I'm not saying some of these names right, but it's just this big open area with a lot of different stores and restaurants, and a lot of the people in our group, they were going to the main big fancy restaurants there, and we decided that we wanted a more unique experience, so we went down a couple alleyways and found this hole-in-the-wall place where it was just this family-owned restaurant that was so cute and had amazing food. And there was even like a dog sitting on a chair in the corner of the room. It was a much better experience than a big fancy restaurant. Because of that experience at that restaurant, we decided to mostly focus on trying to find little hole-in-the-wall restaurants that were more family-owned, that seemed more authentic, not so touristy. We actually got to go to the Trevi Fountain again, and we got to learn some more about it. But then after that, we got on a bus and rode over to the Vatican City. The Vatican was huge, and it just seemed to have an unlimited amount of things to look at. Tons of different statues and paintings, and there was just never a dull moment walking around through there. Something that kind of hindered our experience at the Vatican was the fact that there was a US basketball team just behind us, and they were very, very disruptive. I'm not gonna say which team it was, but they were just being very loud, touching stuff, just very obnoxious, and it made us a little embarrassed to be Americans too, knowing that they were right behind us, making us look bad too. Please don't be those people when you're touring a place. And after we went to the Vatican, that was the end of day 2. On day 3, we didn't have anything big planned, so we actually got to go back to a lot of different places that we wanted to see more of, or places we hadn't seen yet. But one of the first things we did, we actually went back to the Trevi Fountain for the 3rd time because there was a candy shop nearby that we wanted to get some candy from. And we started filling the bags with candy, and then you weigh it afterwards, then pay. And we didn't realize as we were filling how much we were grabbing, and we ended up spending about $200 on candy. We also went shopping, and we were able to get a couple different gifts for people, and also Sam got this very nice leather bag. We also bought our very first shot glass together. That's like the thing that we like to collect, is shot glasses that are cool and unique to certain places. And this was the first one that we bought together as a couple. That was pretty much the extent of what we did for day 3. We shopped, went back to a couple different locations, but not very many, and we rested. Day 4 in Italy started with us packing everything back up, getting on a train, and heading to Florence. Florence was definitely our favorite city that we went to out of the 3, and we even talked about considering living there one day. That's how much we loved Florence. After we dropped our stuff off at the hotel in Florence, the very first thing we did is we left Florence. We actually just went just across the river to Tuscany, and there we got to do a pizza making class that also was a gelato making class. It was super fun because we got to learn the real way to make pizza and the real way to make gelato. It was very unique, and then it also tasted great. There were 2 ladies there while we were making our gelato and pizza, and they were from America as well, and they were definitely drunk. They were disruptive, and again, we were embarrassed to also be Americans at that time. After that, we did a little bit of adventuring around our hotel, but that was pretty much the end of day 4. Day 5, which was our second day in Florence, we spent with another all-day walking tour. The first place we went on the walking tour was the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore, which is super big. It's huge. It's very beautiful on the outside with tons of different colored stone, and crazy enough, it's actually very plain, boring, and empty on the inside, which is crazy. Except for the dome part. On the ceiling of the dome, the tallest part, it's painted very beautifully. We went to a couple other basilicas, and we got to see a lot of different famous statues. For example, the statue of David. We also went to the Dante Museum. It wasn't the craziest thing we saw on the whole trip, but we enjoyed that too. We ended that day with dinner at the rooftop restaurant of our hotel. It was so beautiful and we could see the whole city from there, and the food was amazing. Before the day ended though, I snuck out of the hotel while Sam was taking a nap, and I actually went and bought her Christmas gift, which was this sweater that she was obsessed with. And yeah, that ended day 5. On day 6, we took a trip over to Pisa. It was a pretty long bus ride, but it was definitely worth it. So we actually took a tour in Pisa, and the first thing we saw was this basilica that actually has one purple pillar for some reason. And it is legend that if you stare at that pillar for a certain amount of time, you will end up finding the love of your life. This is what the basilica looked like on the inside. The next thing we saw was the classic, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. We actually learned that the tower's angle has actually changed a lot throughout history. And even though they were able to fix it and put it back to straight, they chose to keep it leaning because it had become such a big attraction. So we actually got to climb to the top of the tower, and it was actually really hard because the steps were so smooth from wear and tear, and also because of the tilt of the tower, at some points it would be like you're walking flat on no stairs, and at some points it would be like you're walking at a really tall incline. So Sam actually has a fear of heights, so it was pretty funny when we got up there. You're holding me, it's okay.
Don't walk backwards, are you psycho?
Nah, it's okay, baby.
I'm gonna just stay real close to the building.
You're good. You're doing great. When we got down from the tower, we decided to go take some funny photos with the tower. In this one, you can see it looks like I'm leaning back, taking a nap against the tower. And in this one, you can see it looks like Sam's ice cream in her ice cream cone. We got a couple other nice photos here, but then we got back on the bus and headed back to Florence, where we ended day 6. On day 7, we got on a train and we left to Venice. So when we got there, we dropped our stuff off at the hotel, and then we left Venice. Again, just like how we did with Florence, we went to a neighboring city named Verona. We saw some pretty cool places like the Romeo and Juliet balcony, and some of the locations from Letters to Juliet, the movie. We also took a short walking tour through Verona. It wasn't nearly as long as any of our others, but it was also nice, and we got to see some cool locations and this really cool castle, and it was awesome. After that, we got back on the train, went back to Venice, and that was the end of day 7. Day 8 was actually in Venice, and we did another all-day walking tour. I hope you're starting to see a pattern here. We really enjoyed these all-day walking tours. So the interesting thing about Venice is it's built entirely on little islands. So because of this, there's a lot of bridges over canals and stuff. And so there's not any vehicles in Venice. There's no cars, not even bikes. And so you either walk everywhere or you take a water taxi, so just a boat, to your destination. Another interesting thing about Venice is that the islands are always shifting and moving. So because of this, the buildings are also shifting and moving. And so there's pretty much no straight lines in Venice. You'll see the side of a building and you'll see it curving as it goes down. So we toured through Venice. We got to see a lot of cool different places, and we got to go on a gondola ride through the canals. We got to go inside the St. Mark's Basilica. This is what it looks like on the outside. But on the inside, it was really cool because the ceilings were completely gold. And when I say gold, I mean like actually gold. Like it was so bright and shiny. We also got to go to the Doge's Palace, which was really cool because it had lots of different like armor and weapons that were used throughout history, as well as a lot of cool paintings and stuff like that. We also went and bought nice Venice shirts. So this is my Venice shirt. And then we wandered around, shopped around, and then we actually got on a water bus, so just a big boat, and we took that all the way back to our hotel on the opposite side of Venice. We had dinner in our hotel, and that was actually the end of our last full day in Italy. Day 9 was pretty much just us waking up, getting on a water taxi, and heading to the airport. It was really sad to be leaving, but we had the greatest time in Italy. It was 100% worth it, and we hope to visit there again. We learned so much about Italy. We experienced so many different things. We ate so many good and delicious foods. And we just loved being in love on our honeymoon. We couldn't have chosen a better place for our honeymoon. And that is the end of our first trip as a married couple.